So are you thinking about buying a home? I know normally on this channel, why you guys watch this is we talk about all things Reno-Tahoe and Northern Nevada, and for people that live here or trying to visit here, or maybe that are trying to move here. And so we try to give you as much information about the area as possible. But what has started to happen recently, we've been doing these videos now for about a year, is I've started to have more and more of you reaching out to me about either buying a house here in Northern Nevada or just buying in general. And so whether you're trying to buy something here in Northern Nevada or in some other market, some other place, when you were finding one of our short form videos that we talk about this stuff, I wanted to talk a little bit about that today and maybe some steps and the process to get you started. So I think of buyers in kind of a few different categories, and the ones that typically have the most questions are first-time home buyers, and they really have no idea where to even start or who to reach out to and just how to get the process started. And so what I typically do is when someone raises their hand about buying a home, I want what I call as a buyer consultation meeting. I try to meet with them in person or on a Zoom meeting, or even if it has to be just a phone call, because I know, especially those of you that are watching these videos, are typically calling me from somewhere outside of Northern Nevada. So it makes it really difficult to meet in person. So what I want to do is sit down with you and start to have the conversations about how this process starts. And I think there's two things that we need to discuss. First is always getting your finances and all your money stuff in order and sitting down and talking with a lender. Because of that, we can figure out what our budget is, how much money we might need for a down payment, some of the other costs and expenses like closing costs. And if you were to buy a condo or a house, what you might, have some extra money laying around. So there might be a few upgrades or a few repairs or a few things that we might want to do that aren't typically going to be part of the transaction. And now if you go talk to a lender and we find out for whatever reason we can't get a loan right now, or let's say we get a loan for $300,000, we can buy a property in Northern Nevada and Reno for $300,000, but it's typically going to be a small condo or what might have been formerly an apartment complex, where you can find some really small older houses or in some outlying areas. But you might decide, hey, I got approved for $300,000, but I'm just not seeing or feeling what we're doing, and I just don't want to buy for that amount. So sitting with the lender does a couple things. One, we can figure out what debts, whether it's credit card debt, student loans, a car loan, whatever kind of debts you have, they're not for assets that are building up in value, and figure out how do we start to pay some of these off? How do we start to figure out a way so that we get rid of some of these payments and we can also increase our loan balances and increase the ability to spend a little more money on a house? And I would never want anyone to spend more than they're comfortable with, but a lot of times you'll see it in reverse where somebody gets approved for way more money than they're comfortable spending. And so once we know what your budget is and how much money we can afford, and knowing that that payment is comfortable for us, and knowing that we can now do this, we set up a home search and we go and we start to look at houses. The other big factor about this is typically a first-time home buyer is renting somewhere or possibly living at home, and we need to know when that lease agreement or when that time frame is to when you can actually either get out of your lease or when your lease expires, or if you didn't get that loan that you're looking for right now, doing all the things we need to do to get a loan, and also then re-up our lease. And ideally, if you don't have to do 12 months, maybe you can do 6 months, having those conversations so that one, your rent does not increase too much. But the whole point of all of this is to get yourself a standard fixed house payment. I talk about this all the time, and I'm not one of those people that necessarily says renting's a bad idea for the short term. But in the long term, people that are buying and own real estate, their net worth is dramatically higher than people that rent their whole lives. Now, I get it. If you move to Reno and you're not sure you're going to be here more than a year or 2 or 3, buying might not sound like a great idea, because especially now, prices are not going to go up in any way the way they were doing a few years ago. And you got to own a home longer then for it to go up high enough to be able to then sell it and have their closing costs and real estate fees and those things be compensated, so you don't end up with less money than you started with. That can be a conversation that we can have depending on everybody's certain situation. But if you buy a house knowing I may not be here for the long haul, then we want to look at something that potentially could also then be turned into a future rental property, and making sure that what we could rent it for would either meet or exceed what your house payment is, or at least be close enough to where if you left to a different area and you had to feed it a little bit of money, it wouldn't be a huge deal. Once we get those things all figured out, then we can have the conversation about bedrooms and bathrooms and locations and condos and single family homes or multifamily buildings or parts of town. We can start to then figure out based upon your price point, because obviously in our market, an average home price now is well into the 500s. And if you're only loan approved to 300 or 400, there's certain areas there's no need to even look at, because you can't afford to live in those areas anyway. And if you're someone that can afford $1 million or $2 million, then there's lots of different areas that potentially you can look at where we may not want to look at homes that are $500,000 and $600,000. So there's all these different scenarios that we have to play out. For those of you that are buyers and you already own a home, so you're someone that may have to sell a house, or potentially you could keep it as a rental. So you don't always have to sell it to move to another market, but it's a conversation where I, through my coaching network over the years, through being a RE/MAX agent over the years, I know real estate agents all over the country, and I would be happy to put you in contact with somebody in your local market to help you figure out, does it make sense on what can I sell it for? How much equity would what I walk away with? Does it make sense to rent it out? Put you in touch with a property manager. There's a lot of options. You don't always have to just sell and take your equity with you and move to the new city. But if you do, there's lots of different options as far as not having to move twice. So let's take someone local as an example that had a home to sell. If they put their home on the market for sale and they didn't have a home already picked out that they wanted to buy, they get nervous that what if I get an accepted offer on my house and I don't know where I'm moving to yet? There's lots of ways we can handle this with either extended longer escrows or doing a rent back. Most lenders, when someone's buying your house as their primary residence, will let you do up to a 60-day rent back. So there's ways to extend the time frame, hopefully with a buyer that's a little bit flexible with you, that then would allow you to be able to go look for a house, be able to buy and close on that house, potentially have already closed on the sale of your house and stay there and then move one time, or maybe do some paint and flooring at a house. So there's lots of ways. There's contingent sale options. I just want you to know those are things you need to let us as real estate professionals worry about. And that's why it's important that you use somebody that's well versed in these things, that's done it for a long time. There's lots of options. It's not as difficult as you think that it may be. That also goes same thing if you're relocating. Ideally, if you know that you're moving to Reno, the sooner you can let us know, the better. We work with a couple of HR people over at the hospital, and they always try to let me know right away when they're interviewing people, because usually part of doing a job relocation is they want to know a lot about the city and the community and what can I afford to move into, because it may be vastly different than where they live currently. So if you are watching these videos and you're finding out all kinds of great information about Northern Nevada and you're considering moving here, do not be afraid to reach out to us. I am not going to force you to buy a house or move here. I just want to give you all the information and the tools and the resources, whether it is lenders, other realtors, moving companies. Once you get here and buy a house, all the things that you might need as far as roofers and electricians, all those things. We want to be that resource for you. I always tell people all the time, you first move here, you don't know anyone, and maybe it's your wife's birthday next week and you want to know where to take her for dinner. We've always said videos about places to go, but you can just reach out to us. I want to be that resource for all things, no matter what they are. So full circle this back to what we originally started with, is that if you are someone who has raised your hand and either are renting, thinking about buying, or relocating to Northern Nevada, and you're not sure where to start, reach out. We will guide you slowly through the process. You do not have to worry about any pressure sales tactics. That is not how we do things. It's getting you the information that you need that you can make smart, good decisions. And then again, I'm always a big fan of trying to help you build up your long-term wealth. So with all being said, comment below, ask any questions that you may have. If you're not comfortable putting them in the comments below, by all means, there's ways on here you can reach out to me directly so that we can get you the information that you need so that you will feel good about whether it's moving 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years from now, and you'll know what you're doing. So subscribe to the channel, and we'll hopefully see you on some other videos coming up very soon.